everyone. So my name is Santi. These are the rest of my team at Galway University. And today I'm going to talk to you about a study that is part of a larger project funded by the Irish Research Council. And as the title says, we looked at the effects of wind turbine sound on working memory and annoyance. So I'll start with a brief theoretical context, then share with you some of the experimental program that we developed for the project, and then if we have time, I'll dive into some reflections for future research. Now, what you see here is the map of Ireland, and what is happening is that more and more countries are starting to have loads of wind farms. In Ireland alone, we have more than 300. So I think it would be fair to say that it's become a constant feature in our environment, and as a man-made addition to the environment, I think it's important we keep on asking in what way this could affect us, if at all. Now, research in the area has focused on broad health indicators, such as health factors as well as physical factors. But the evidence seems to be more robust only when it comes to problems related to sleep as well as annoyance, as we keep on seeing in this conference and in the literature. Now, we're going to focus on annoyance. So when it comes to noise coming from wind turbines, we know that it's usually at lower levels compared to other environmental noises, often compared to a whisper. Not that I would want anybody whispering to me all the time when I'm at home. But the other aspect there is that those are measures compared based on decibels, and it may not necessarily be the best metric when it comes to perception or human perception of sound, even though it is a typical metric for the measurement, objective measurement of sound. The other thing is that literature keeps on pointing out that there are other features to this sound that could be of relevance when it comes to noise annoyance, such as the regularity of the rhythm, infrasound, etc., etc. Another challenge is annoyance. So what I may consider annoying may not necessarily be what some of you in the audience consider annoying. So there's a bit of a discrepancy between how that behaves at the group level or an individual level. Now, while research has not found significant harmful health effects on wind turbine sound on health. Very little research has been focused on cognitive processes. And you see the effects of, the potential effects of this type of sound on cognitive processes could be either direct, so maybe preventing you from concentrating on a task at hand, or indirect. So perhaps I'm getting annoyed because this noise is getting on the way of the task that I'm trying to concentrate on. And we know from neuropsychological research that some cognitive processes are underpinned by specific brain wave frequencies. Attention, for example, is characterized by theta wave, problem-solving gamma, etc. And so when this gets interesting is when we then start acknowledging the ability of the brain to synchronize with external stimulation. That's what is known in the literature as the neural entrainment, which, as you can read there, basically it just posits that our brain's oscillation patterns of our brain matches that of the external stimulation. And in fact, this is the basis of perception. So a sine wave oscillating on and off 8 times per second has the potential to entrain the brain at an alpha level between 8 and 10 hertz. And since noise has this potential to entrain the brain and thereby affect cognitive processes, there's a direct or a potential link between the rate frequency at which wind turbines can produce sound and influence on cognitive activity. There's some research done on memory, demonstrating that, in fact, memory is a process sensitive to this kind of phenomenon of entrainment. And so this is kind of like the theoretical framework from where we're coming from. And for this experimental part of the project, we wanted to answer two main questions: whether wind turbine sound affected visual working memory, and on the other hand, just to see what other acoustic characteristics were related to annoyance. So the wind turbine sound acoustics, psychoacoustics that we focused on, among others, were loudness, sharpness, fluctuation strength, roughness. So for the experiment, we recruited 46 participants, kind of a nice age range, perfectly gender balanced, completely accidental. The measures that we took then were performance on the memory task, which I'll describe in more detail in a second, annoyance ratings to the audio recordings that we used, and a psychometric measure of individual differences when it comes to noise sensitivity. That particular scale has been considered a precursor of noise annoyance. The stimuli that we used was 18 audio samples. These are actual recordings from wind farms in the east coast of Ireland. My colleague who will be talking after me will give you more details on that. And the visual stimuli was basically the one that we used for the memory task. Basically just consisted of visual stimuli slides with color squares, and you could have either 4x4 in terms of the number of color squares on each side of the screen, 2x2, 4x2, and vice versa. This was obviously directly related to cognitive load in terms of items to pay attention to or ignore during the task. What you see here is a sequence of a typical trial in the memory task. So basically what participants have to do was to pay attention to the stimuli, the side of the screen indicated by the arrow. So these were the relevant stimuli, presumably the ones that they had to remember, and then compare it to a second set of stimuli. And if there was any change, for example, here is red instead of blue, they have to indicate so by pressing the space bar. And at the end of the block of trials, then we asked people to rate how annoying they found the soundtrack that was playing during that block of trials. We used 18, randomly chosen for each block, etc. Just so you get a feel, this is a screen recording of the practice, so you will get feedback here. So that was the sound, and then try to see if you... So as you can see, there's a very brief exposure to the sample stimuli, and then the test comes from a second, during which people have to produce the response. I don't know how much time we have, so I'm just gonna move on. Right, so what did we find? So we analyzed our data via a series of mixed effects models. For the memory performance, we feed a binomial logistic regression, basically predicting memory accuracy, so whether participants go a trial right or wrong. The first terms of the model correspond to the memory tasks, so number of distractors or number of relevant stimuli. Obviously, that's task integrity, so those factors led to or influence or impacted memory performance. What came as a surprise, though, was that at least as it concerns our paradigm and the exposure of that we did to the stimuli, we did not find that any of the acoustic stimuli had any influence on memory performance. So to answer our first question, the answer is no. brief exposure to wind turbine sound does not seem to affect short-term visual memory. In contrast, when it came to predicting annoyance, all of the acoustic characteristics that we chose do have an influence over the rates of annoyance. By the way, these are set standardized coefficients, so we can do relative comparisons. And what we see here is that roughness came as a big influencer there. Fluctuation strength as the weakest predictor of annoyance. However, these effects are actually moderated by noise sensitivity levels. So I suppose this is one of those nice interactions with the psychological aspects. So this is important so far as we take into account individual variables. So what we see here is that then loudness and frequency strength were led to greater ratings of annoyance for individuals who were as a function of a noise sensitivity, whereas roughness and sharpness had the opposite effect, kind of mitigating effect when it came to annoyance. Just one thing to bear in mind, though. So basically, when you look at this, 80 or more than half of the soundtracks, the ratings, of which there were quite a few, were actually rated as not at all annoying, and 25% slightly. So that could be one of the reasons why we didn't have enough data, perhaps, to relate to memory. More research is needed in that area. And lastly, so in addition, obviously, to the ratings during the task, we also asked participants general questions. One of the questionnaires that we also included was the attitudes towards wind turbines questionnaire. And the only thing I want to point out here is, I suppose, shouldn't come as a surprise, and is the discrepancy that we find when people are asked about annoyance in general terms, and when people are asked about annoyance directly related to noise or samples of noise. So what we see here is that 80% of people say, yeah, wind turbines annoy me, and there might be other questions related to health effects. But as I showed, most of the ratings towards the actual sound samples, they were going on the opposite direction. This information clearly is relating to other variables such as visual aspects, aesthetic expectations that we know are also played a big role in annoyance towards wind turbines. Just to conclude, well, they kind of reflect the main findings, so I won't dwell in here, but I'll leave you with a caveat though, and it is a good thing, as far as we as human beings are concerned, that we did not find that temporary exposure to wind turbine sound affects our memory in this case. However, this remains a highly neglected area of research, I would say. There are many other psychological processes that could be of interest and deserving of attention. If any of you in the audience know of projects that do look at cognitive processes in relation to wind turbine, preferably, do let me know. I want to hear from you. The other thing is psychometrics, psychoacoustics in relation to individual variables, kind of a key factor to bear in mind. For this case, we use the noise sensitivity scale, which has nice psychometric properties. Just take-home message for future research. So, of course, some of the exposure to sound in our experiment was brief, so that could be the factor that other experiments could take into consideration. Also, the sample, we didn't select it to people who were directly affected or experience on a daily basis these visual effects or auditory effects of wind turbines. In fact, from our sample, I think only 17 or so lived nearby wind farms. and I won't take my colleagues' time, so I'll just end it there. All the materials for the project and additional information is on the Open Science Framework. As I mentioned, this particular experiment was part of a larger project funded by the Irish Research Council. So by all means, check it out, get the materials, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.